but I'm still going to talk about Sogdiana. And it consisted always of four major parts, naturally, Samarkand, Bukhara, Kesh, and Nakshab, situated on two rivers, Zarafshan and Kashkadarya. And today I'm going to talk about coins which come from Soghd, South Soghd, specifically from the areas of Nakshab and Kesh. Well, on the modern map of Uzbekistan, it looks like this. And the time I'm talking about is the time when Sogdiana was first outside of the borders of Kushan state. So the border goes along the Baisun Mountains, and then Kushan territory occupies small part of middle Amudarya Valley. But then the rest of it is something that is completely independent. And then the next period, Kushano-Sasanian, when Kushano-Sasanian protectorate, or whatever you call this, Kushano-Sasanian state, actually occupies part of Sogdiana, specifically Bukhara. While the rest of Sogdiana, that is, two South Sogdian principalities and Samarkand, remain independent. And the question is about the coins which you see on the screen, which were called in various ways in different times. I suggested that they should be called Leontomachia, with this actually artificially created Greek compound, simply because it's the shortest one-word description. All others were lion slayer, king slaying lion, and things like this, and that was not really all that convenient. These coins are known from 1895, when they published such coin that came from a purchase made by Edouard Blanc in Tashkurgan. What is important is that after the Second World War, excavations started in southern Soghd. The man who conducted these excavations was mostly, most of these excavations was Sergei Kuzmich Kabanov, and he started finding these coins in significant numbers. In fact, by the end of his archaeological career, he registered 26 finds in the area of Nakshab, and that is the desert delta of the river Kashkadarya, principally oasis, and then 6 more in the adjacent area around Chimkurgan reservoir. I have hard time seeing it. Yeah, here it is, around this area. And that made him think that these coins should be attributed to Nakshab. Well, naturally, all the finds were coming from this area. No finds at that time were coming from Kesh. So area in the upper Kashkadarya Valley. In general, we didn't know much at all about this area in terms of monetary circulation. We did almost no recorded finds there. And also there is a third part of the very same South Soghd. It's a small separate river called Guzardarya, and at certain times there was independent political entity. In fact, we know, for example, one at the time of Arab invasion, when Suleiman Abu Sari actually eliminates the king of Khuzar, who was apparently very mighty and had a very well-fortified positions. And that was an independent ruler in the early 8th century. So we also don't have any of these finds at the time in Khuzar oasis. However, the readings of these coins, which were proposed by different scholars, first, maybe not very convenient, maybe not very sensible, like, for example, Drouin was reading the Bukhmas Dai, and we didn't simply know enough about Sogdian script and Sogdian paleography really to build anything solid. these readings eventually started by 1960s, kind of moving towards one important word. The first word here was read as Kashank, Kushanak, Kishank, and Kishak, and so on. And it became clear that, particularly for Vladimir Lifshitz, who was the most important Russian Sogdologist and dealt with these coins in early stage, that this must be Kesh. This Kesh attribution, this Kesh legend was obviously in contradiction with Nakhshab finds of coins. Edward Tertviladze tried to kind of solve the problem. He was trying to offer several different explanations as to, explanations for this seeming contradiction. And particularly, he was trying to say that Ksenipa, the zone where Nakhshab was sedated, was pronounced similar to Kashanak, Keshanak, and that this was really the coins of Ksenipa. Well, that doesn't work. Ksenipa is a Greek rendition, in fact, as we now know, rendition of Nakhshab, similar to many other Central Asian Iranian compounds, which were, or Iranian words, which were completely distorted in Greek. By now, we have over 600 these coins available, and we have very significant number of early specimens where inscription is quite clear, or at least some parts of it. And the initial part looks very clear. It's K. This could be Vav, could be Yod, Sh, N, and Ka. In other words, it is Kashank, no question about it. And then most likely the next vertical shaft is nothing else but silent Vav, which you could expect at that time in Sogdiana. And then after that, there is a letter which looks very similar to Kaf at the beginning, but has a tail like this. And then after it, a letter which is hard to interpret. Well, in fact, we don't know this letter in other inscriptions. Well, we know it in a couple of inscriptions from South Soghd, which we don't know quite how to read. And that was creating a problem because while everybody were suggesting that first word is Kashank, Kashank, Kishank, about the second one, there was a confusion, mostly because of this letter. So there were different ideas about Henning tried to read Kana, Kav there. Lifshitz tried to read Mrai, that is ideogram for my ruler in Aramaic, and so on. In fact, most likely this is Ha, and overall the Gamma, actually not Ha, Gamma, and letter which actually corresponds in term to Greek Gamma, and then with a last little line here, which is visible here, 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 well, here. This altogether becomes Bagi, which is a normal title. We see it everywhere. And Bagi is means master, the lord, and that would be lord of Kashank, Kashanak. In other words, lord of Kesh. well, why the hell we have this name, well, that's title on the coins of Nakhshab. The question is in distribution of our finds, because recently a number of finds were made in this area, finally, and particularly one little micro-hoard was published by Artviladze back in 1988, which contained two coins like this from the area of Shahrizabs, is now complemented by another hoard found this year of these coins in Kitab, and then about 30 separate finds which have been registered there by private collectors during the last decade. So the whole story is that we simply did not know what was circulating in Kesh. And these coins equally circulate in Kesh and in Nakhshab. Moreover, this year, once more, 3 coins like this came from Guzar. It looks like that this coin circulated in the entire area. And it means that in the system of South Soghd coinage, and that is Kesh, that is Nakhshab, there was a period when the entire valley, with all 3 separate units, all irrigational areas, were united in one state, which was probably called Kashanak, but center of which was probably still in Nakhshab, in Yerkurgan, because it was the largest city, or possibly they were moving from one capital to another. Well, these are pure speculations. All of it would be until we have different material. But what is clear that there was a period of unity. I'm not going to talk about the dates of these coins right away. I would like to point out to some interesting aspects of them. The coins attracted attention, first of all, because of their unusual portrait with wild hairstyle and their very unusual reverse, which does not seem to correspond to anything else in Soghdian coinage. About the reverse, about the origin of the image on the reverse, first of all, Michael Auram, some time ago, well, back in 1986, noticed similarity between these coins with Archer and these coins of Nakhshab Leontomachia. Indeed, if you look at this figure, you would see that it's pretty much the same gentleman, which actually was given different position of hands. And in fact, if to look through earlier stages of the development of Archer coins, we could actually arrive to the earliest of them, which look like this, and which are actually based on Hellenistic prototype. That is Apollo of Belvedere. And if you look at our gentleman with this, his name, the coins is Basileus Antiochus. So he is definitely standing in the same pose. He is definitely having the same position of legs. He has a cloak. He is, in fact, as we'll see later, wearing a Attic helmet, and he has quiver behind his shoulder at the back. The most important is to remember that this pose is extremely rare in world art. In fact, in the entire Hellenistic art, with only one sculpture, where a archer has this pose. This is Apollo of Belvedere. But then the question is how our gentleman, who for a long time, for 300 years, was standing on the coins with his bow, suddenly decided to kill a lion. And where did this lion came from? And Olga Ivanovna Smirnova suggested that this was borrowed from somehow coins of Phoenician city of Sidon. Well, it's very nice to think that coins necessarily borrow imagery from coins. But it's very hard to imagine that 800-year gap can be somehow covered. Sidon coins of the late 5th, early 4th century BC could actually affect coins of the second half of the 4th century BC, 4th century Anno Domini in Kesh, not to say about the distance of 2,000 miles. Of course, there are other media where imagery with king killing the lion, slaughtering the lion, slaying the lion, whatever, are common. Well, to start with, Sidon is not really inventing anything. Coins of Sidon were directly reproducing Assyrian state seal. That is official state seal of Assyria. We know a number of specimens. This is the British Museum one, which is, as often with the British Museum, is the best of all preserved. And then we also had images in Assyrian art. That is the famous relief of Ashurbanipal killing a lion in Nineveh. Well, that continues into Achaemenid times. In Persepolis, you can see king slaying fantastic beast, which is mostly lion, but has all kinds of other features, wings, scorpio tail, rare legs of a bird of prey, or a lion, or a griffin, or a bull. In fact, if it was not enough, poses are slightly changing. And in this case, he is not just killing a lion, but he is holding him like a little cat, stressing the fact that the king is slightly bigger in at least human imagination than the lion. This continues. In Parthian period, remarkably, this story is enriched by Hercules, who often starts strangling a lion. That is Tangi Sarvak relief, and that is, in fact, graffito from Bandian, both obviously with some influence of Heraclean mythology and Nemean lion. And then, of course, we have Sasanians, and that is a fairly recently found small but very important relief, which is in which was in fact found in water, but then was actually moved to the nearby Haft Tanan Museum and published. And it's not very far from what we see on the coins. Likewise, well-known image with Bahram II or Barahran II slaying a lion on a relief is also there. But that is probably a movable object. So we should look for a movable object of the category which would be close to the coins. And then anything you want, any version of this iconography would be found on seals. This is not the most common type of Sasanian seals, but particularly in private collections published by Rika Gizelin and Jin Yu, we actually have a number of specimens. And here you can see examples when king is strangling the lion, king is piercing the lion's body with a spear, or slaying with him with a dagger, or there are also versions with a sword. Meanwhile, we know for sure that sometimes the same people carved gemstones and dies for coins. So there's no big problem seeing this transition. Moreover, the same scene or versions of the same scene are known as Sasanian silver, That is the bowl from Orlov collection, which originally was in Оружейная Palata in Moscow and now is in Hermitage. And that is something that showed up on Christie's sale fairly recently in 2010. This is, however, post-Sasanian. So there was plenty of possibilities. And in fact, we do have similar story in Sogdiana. Well, this is a carved wooden board from Penjikent. I personally was in Penjikent when it was discovered and cleaned. And I have to tell you, when it was fresh in the soil, it looked better. It shrunk a little bit. Kind of cracks became broader. But it's a fantastic image where the king is slaying a crazy winged beast, similar to the one in Persepolis. So we probably had all the parallel lines, was strangled, killed. Well, people were doing with these poor lines whatever they could all the time and depicted this. We have very limited record of it. And that would be easy to have it on coins. So we don't need to go very far. However, we have other things to think about. And that is peculiar hairstyle. Please note, it's very strange with this shorter thing and very long thing here. And there were a number of explanations offered in scholarly literature as to what's happening to this hair. It's obviously crazy. But in fact, it's very, very simple. It is an Attic helmet, which first looked like this, then like this, and then simply like this. Well, they simply did not understand the very small image on previous coin series and constructed this hairstyle, which is absolutely unrealistic. I mean, you can't imagine that anything would hold hair in this position. It's impossible. Well, second interesting thing, Masson was trying to link these coins with some Parthian dynasty and so on. And partially, well, among other things, he was referring to this mark on the cheek, which actually appears on as a circle on early coins, but then later as a simple kind of bump on the later coins. And in fact, you once more don't need to go very far. That is a sculpture from the temple in Yerkurgan. In other words, the city when these coins were minted. And what you see here is probably a tattoo on the cheek. That also raises another question. This sculptural image was always considered to be the image of the goddess. But with this correspondence of details with a coin could be just local king. Well, I don't want to base all my judgment on a small tattoo on a cheek, but, you know. And then this very strange attire and position of the legs. And that is giving some idea. Well, he has a short kaftan, and short kaftan of the same type is common for Kushan rulers. And then he has something that is usually not worn with a kaftan, because kaftan and cloak are mutually exclusive. And they're worn only in divine world, where cloak is a symbol of divinity, or in royal sedation like Kushan kings. Well, here you can see how the kaftan is organized. And position of the legs is also recognizable with gigantic feet. So there was obviously influence, I would say, side prototype from Kushan coins. Well, the interesting story is that these coins had a long history. Well, I'm not going once more to discuss all the details. Joe Cribb once more made me acquainted with an interesting hoard which was found in Ghazni, which contained over 600 different coins, mostly Kushano-Sasanian, well, with the latest of them being Varakhran Kushan Shah with this
horns and dumpy stuff, dumpy, as the owner of the hoard was saying, coins of Shapur II, so dated to the middle of the 4th century. And in this hoard was one of the early specimens of our coins. The latest coins are coming from archaeological contexts of the middle of the 6th century. So they were minted for 200 years. Well, it was possible because nothing had changed. Sogdians, in principle, between 4th and 6th century, were not interested in marking the names of the rulers on the coins. That was a very strange habit. And what's happened that this coin started being distorted. Inscriptions moved first from uncial, where every letter is written separately, to cursive, and then from this rather cursive state like here to gibberish like here. Eventually, terrifyingly bad series like this with unreadable inscriptions, completely distorted, appear, and finally our good-looking gentleman ends up looking like this. That is by the middle of the 6th century. After that, there was only one way. The way was to change type, but they didn't change it to a good type right away first, because at that moment, as at least I understand, Nakhchab was devastated in the process of Heptalite-Turkic War. The major battles happened around Nakhchab, and the city of Yerkurgan ceased to exist. It was a huge city, and new capital was built a little bit later, further, Shuluktepe, that's only around 6.5 kilometers from there. But they had to build on a new spot because the devastation was so bad they couldn't restore the old city. And this bed type looks like this. Only one thing that happens on this bed type is that the king and the lion change their positions. Lion is now on the left. Inscription is unreadable. I know 2 specimens. If anybody knows more, I would be very grateful to get a photograph of this. But so far, I was able to, sifting through hundreds of these coins to find only 2. And then this situation changes and new type is introduced. Well, new type has the same lion slaying on the reverse, same Leontomachia scene, but in the version which in position with the lion to the left, as which we had previously. The quality is improving. Strange thing, a new tamha, no earlier coins didn't have tamha, a new tamha appears, and this tamha is something that we know as tamha of Samarkand. But here it is appearing sometime in the second half of the 6th century, I would assume quite early in the second time of the 6th century. So it's probably was here earlier than it was in Samarkand. Because in Samarkand, for the first time, we have it at the very end of the 6th century. And the portrait in 3/4 turn. That's normal because, in fact, in the entire Soghdian coinage, in the second half of the 6th century, there's massive change of the portraiture. Before we had exclusively profile portraits. In the second half of the 6th century, we have 3/4 turn. Interestingly, this series is rare. These are all coins that I know. In fact, I have to reveal a dirty secret. This is the same coin. I just have nothing to put here for symmetry. So I put it there. It's a different photograph of the same coin. I couldn't tolerate the void in the plate. Then they completely escape this. They keep this tamga, have 3/4 portrait, and start developing types which are extremely rare. This is all that we know from the 7th century of Nakhshab. And that is much more massive, early 8th century coinage with a Nakhshab horse, so-called. That is the first type. There are 5 types. It's fairly massive. But that is a result of devastation. Nakhshab was in bad shape for the whole century after this destruction. So that is the story of Leontomachia coins. I hope I didn't annoy you with my Soghdian subjects that much, but 2 results. One, we can think that there was really a unification of the entire Kashkadaria Valley within the second half of the 4th to the middle of the 6th century, and then that there was a significant change in local traditions, local coinage, and local life in the second half of the 6th century. Well, both are to some extent supported by archaeological data.